Welcome to chapter 10. This chapter we are going to dig deep into the theories and practices of career development. So this should be a beneficial chapter for you as you explore the career that you're currently in or that you desire to enter one day, and see how well you're tracking based on what the authors have written. And of course, I'll throw in any of my opinions and tidbits of information as I see fit. So let's dive in. So what you should learn by the time you're done reading this chapter, you should be able to define career development and summarize the major objectives associated with it. Name 3 entities that are required to provide input for a successful career development program, and briefly describe their respective responsibilities, and describe the steps involved in implementing a career development program. Now let me make sure I make this clear that this is within an organization. This is within your place of employment. So if your employer is not concerned about your career development, helping you get to the next level, not just within their organization, but as a whole, then you may be with the wrong company, or you could be a positive catalyst to change. But we'll talk about that further. Let's keep focused on our learning objectives, shall we? So, something else that you should be able to do by the time you're done reading this chapter is define a career path and self-management. List several myths that employees hold related to career planning and advancement, and several myths that management holds related to career development. You should be able to define a career plateau and what it means to be a plateaued employee. Describe the 4 principal career categories. Explain the concept of a career lattice, and distinguish between dual career couples and dual earner couples. Define outplacement. Explain what the glass ceiling is. List some of the online career development resources that are available today. Explain the concept of life preparedness. So let's jump right into career development. It is the ongoing formalized effort by an organization that focuses on developing and enriching the organization's human resources in light of both the employees and the organization's needs. And there are various factors that contribute to increasing importance of career development, such as increased employee mobility, related environmental factors. And when a corporation goes through any restructuring and downsizing, it may cause many employees to change their careers even when they did not desire change. It just happens because the company's been restructured and they're either in a new role that doesn't fit them, or they've actually lost their job. So there's a necessity of career development within organizations, and that means to meet the immediate and future HR needs on a timely basis, to better inform the organization and each individual about the potential career paths that the organization has, to utilize existing HR programs to the fullest by integrating various activities. And when I back up to the second bullet point, it should not just be within the organization, but it should also be within the industry that the organization works within as well. So it should show you all the various career paths. Your organization may be limited. It may have a specialty focus. It may have just a niche market that it serves, and it limits itself within that market. but that does not mean that that's the limits to where your career paths can go. Just maybe only defined within that organization, but it should actually extend beyond, so you could see where the horizon is, where the zenith, where the top of the mountain is. That is really what a great career development program provides. So let's look at career planning. You'll sit down and formulate what your career goals are, and then develop a plan for reaching those goals. And they have to be, of course, realistic. I mean, they can't be so just off the charts that you can't even then develop a plan to reach them. And you don't have the resources or are able to identify the necessary resources in order to reach those goals. So it has to be realistic. Excuse me, so that you can look at all the available opportunities in relation to your individual abilities. Because there may be opportunities, but they may not align with your abilities. If you don't have the skill sets, if you don't have the drive and determination to actually seize those opportunities, then you're not aligned properly. So the responsibilities that your organization that you currently work for or that you work for in the future, their responsibility should be that they help to instigate and ensure that career development takes place within the lifespan of your career within that organization. And develop and communicate career options within your organization and promote and create conditions that help facilitate the development of your career plans. So HR personnel are generally responsible for ensuring that this information is kept current and should see that accurate information is conveyed. So you should see that there's an interrelationship among different career paths and that those interrelationships are clearly understood. And they should promote conditions and create environments that facilitate development of your career plan. So let's think about your responsibility as the employee. Preparing your individual career plan based on your awareness and your desire related to the career, and it requires a conscious effort on your part. Organizations can help by providing trained specialists to encourage and guide you, and this could be accomplished by setting aside a few hours during each calendar quarter. And although it's ultimately your responsibility, experience has shown that without some encouragement and direction from your management team within your organization, you'll actually make less progress than you would if if it's kind of given to you as a suggestion. So if without having some kind of encouragement, direction, follow up, you may not actually follow through. So there is a shared responsibility in regards to making sure that you not only prepare that plan, identify where your desires are within the career, and making a conscious effort to pursue. Should also be a shared responsibility of the organization. So, as a manager, you're responsible to serve as a catalyst for that positive change, as well as a sounding board to allow your team members to come to you whenever they need to vent or they need to vet some ideas or whatever the case may be. And you also have a responsibility as a manager to show your team members how to go about the process and then help them evaluate the conclusions that they reach. And although it's not expected to be a professional counselor, you can and should play a key role in facilitating the development of your team members' career. So how do you go about implementing this in a system? You look at your individual assessment of your abilities, your interests, and your career goals. You create a vision statement, which is a clear, concise statement of your goals in measurable terms. And you then, the organization has an assessment of your abilities and potentials. And then there's it's jointly conducted by HR and your immediate manager. in order to assess where you are, where you have the potential to be, compared to what um, or how you see yourself. So Figure 10.1 looks at the various roles at Corning Incorporated, and this was adapted from Personnel by Leibowitz and Feldman and Mosley. If you see Corning's role, and I will actually enlarge this so that it is more visible. Providing job information, implementing effective placement process, supporting HR system, offering education and training. That's the company's role within the career planning development. The employee's role is to do a self-assessment, gathering data, setting goals, working with their supervisor, developing the plan, checking internet bulletin board, and applying for various openings. And then the manager's role is to appraise the performance, do any coaching and supporting that's needed, guiding and counseling the team members, providing feedback, and supplying information while maintaining integrity of the system. So you see how an organization can create something as simple as this that helps to highlight all three players' roles in this development process. So when we communicate our career options and the opportunities within the organization, there's different headers that we look at. And one is career pathing, and that's where you're going to address the specifics of how you can progress from one job to another within the organization. It's literally the paths that you can take, and you can show the various ways and how you go about making the progression. Another headline, another benchmark or highlight is our career self-management. And that's your ability to keep up with the changes that not only occur within the organization itself, but within the industry as a whole, so that you're prepared for any changes that take place in the future, which, of course, as you know, change always happens. So making sure that you're staying up on the ins and outs of what's happening in your organization as well as the industry is a sure way of self-managing your career. So we look at career counseling and how we go about setting realistic goals and plans to accomplish where you want to be in your career, and making sure that we recognize that there are limits to career counseling, that we must always respect the confidentiality of our team members, establish a relationship where there is some transparency and an open door policy where team members know they can come and get guidance and use you as a manager as a sounding board. You have to be able to listen effectively. Listening not to respond, but listening to actually find out what it is that that person is expressing, what they desire, what they need, what their fears are, and how best you can help them. Making sure that you consider alternatives. So you have a plan A, B, C, D, E to Z. Seeking and sharing information, right? There's a give and take. It's an ebb and flow with information flow. And assisting with goal definition and planning, making sure that you're helping where that team member can clearly define what their goal is and to set up a plan and action to actually reach those goals. Then we can consider some myths that are held by employees, managers. And the myths that are held by employees is that there's always room for one more person at the top. That's a myth, right? It may not be room for one more person at the top. In every environment, in every space, in every realm of life, there are limits. And so there's not always room for one more person. You can sit back. If you look at the C-suite leadership, those are all of your team members that have a C in the title of their name: Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Information Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, so on and so forth. There's only so many chiefs that you can have. So there is not always room for one more at the top. Another myth is that the key to success is being in the right place at the right time. That's a myth as well. Sometimes it's not being at the right place at the right time. It's knowing the right person, right? Um, so there's different ways in order to be successful. It could be the person who has the most hustle, the person who comes in early and stays late. That could be your key to success. So there's various elements that take place. There are different variables and moving parts that lead to one's success. Another myth is that good subordinates make good superiors. That's not true. A good subordinate means that you could be great at following, but that does not mean that you're great at leading. So that is a myth. The fourth thing is that career development and planning are functions of human resource personnel. That is a myth, right? And you'll be able to dig deeper in chapter 10 to see what exactly or why exactly that is a myth. Something else is that all good things come to those who work long, hard hours. Also not true. Remember I said you come in early and stay late. Does not necessarily mean that you're working long, hard hours. It could just mean better efficiency of the time that you do use. What I mean by when I say come in early and stay late is that there's become and it's not just recent, it's been an ongoing dilemma where you have employees who are showing up to work late, so you're clocking in late. You may take too long on your lunch break, or you're coming back from lunch break and it's taking you too long to get back into the ebb and flow of doing your work. And then you're leaving early, or you've mentally checked out early. So if the clock out time is 5, by 4:30 you're almost not even functioning at all. And so with that means that your commitment to the company's mission and the vision is not there. There's not a buy-in. So when I say come in early, what I mean is that you're not hauling tail down the hallway at 8:57 to be able to clock in at 9 a.m. You're at work with adequate time to get something to eat, to chat with your coworkers, to take a leisurely stroll, to go to the restroom, whatever, to read a chapter or so in your book. And sometimes staying late allows you to be free to finalize any missing things that you forgot, or last minute things, or just to breathe, where you're not rushing to leave. So that's where that mindset comes from. So no, all good things do not come to those who work long, hard hours, because there's plenty of people that seem to get the short end of the stick. They work long, hard hours and they still don't get the promotions. They still don't get the pay raises. So another myth is that rapid advancement along a career path is a function of the kind of manager one has. Wrong. And way to progress is to determine one's weaknesses and then work hard to correct them. That's another myth. Working on your weaknesses or working aggressively towards correcting your weaknesses does not mean that you're going to progress. You really should consider focusing on your strengths. Focusing on your strengths more sometimes will counterbalance your weaknesses, because if your strengths outweigh your weaknesses, then guess what? Your manager, the higher ups in your organization could overlook your weaknesses and say, well, they're not good at X, Y, and Z, but is it possible for them to delegate those tasks or those functions out to someone else? Yes. great. Then that's what we'll do. But you could obsess so much on your weaknesses that little by little, your strengths become weaker and weaker in the long run. And so it's not necessarily the way to progress. Something else that employees sometimes believe is that you always do your best regardless of the task. Always do your best regardless of the task. Sometimes that will lead to perfectionism. And sometimes perfectionism means that you're so focused on getting it done right and perfect that you waste valuable time, and time equals money. And you could have just done good enough. That's not with all things, right? But there are some instances where good enough is truly good enough. We have a tendency sometimes to try to focus on perfect, and perfect can be the death of the good, as the saying goes. Another myth is that it is wise to keep home life and work life separated. That is not necessarily true. Sometimes there's a healthy balance because, as you guys have learned from working with me in this course, is that I will bring in elements and examples from home life, your personal life, and how it applies to work life. And so sometimes you can learn a great deal about what's happening in the work environment within the industry when you have a reference point from your home life, and vice versa. So there are certain things that, yes, you should not share about your home life with your work life, and vice versa. Now, another myth is that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Yeah, okay. Until you climb the other side of the fence and you realize it's not so green. So you guys know that this is a myth, not just in business, but in life. The other side of the fence, that person, even if it is greener, they most likely put in a lot more work and effort and money to get their grass to be as green as it is. So there you go. There are no shortcuts in life. Now, our managers have a lot of myths that they can also get caught up with. That career development will raise expectations, that somehow if I develop myself and I go through taking the additional courses and going to the seminars and workshops and getting the certifications, that those above me, the seniors above me, will have greater expectations of me to perform, to do more, so on and so forth. That is a myth. If anything, it just makes you a well-rounded professional. It makes you more valuable. And if there's ever a time where the company has to be restructured or downsized, your value will determine whether or not they keep you or let you go. So your career development can be very key. Another myth is that we will be overwhelmed with requests. Right? Being a manager, that you'll be overwhelmed with requests. You're only overwhelmed with requests if you don't know how to manage the inflow and outflow of information coming to you and from you. So if you don't set up guidelines and boundaries and rules and expectations, then you'll be overwhelmed with just about anything. A third myth is that managers will not be able to cope. Once again, listen to what I said about bullet point 2, right? It really is based on this, how you set things in motion for yourself, how you define your role and your relationship with team members above you and at your level and below your level in the organization. A fourth myth is that we do not have the necessary systems in place. And that is a myth And the fact that if you actually create a needs assessment, if you actually sit back and ascertain what's needed, then you'll get there. That we do not have the necessary systems in place will create an environment, create an instance in where you don't pull the trigger figuratively on something, you don't act on something, you don't move forward on something out of fear of not being prepared for what's next. And so you end up having procrastination, you have analysis paralysis, and what you have to be able to do is just take the step forward. Don't be concerned of whether or not the entire yellow brick road is laid down for you. Step forward and look ahead, and you'll see if there's some missing bricks. At that point, you can bring some bricks with you. You can make some along the way. But what you're not going to do, what is detrimental, is if you don't move forward. You have to move forward on that road. So that is a career-related myth that's oftentimes held by managers. So let's look at some career plateaus. And this is where you hit this point where you don't seem to go anywhere. You just kind of are stagnant. And this is a point where the likelihood of an additional promotion seems to be very low. You just seem like you've hit a wall. And it takes place where you are, the company has not, or either they have not created or they have not clearly defined the career path in which you can actually go above where you are. So it could be a defined role where there does not seem like there would ever be a need for your position to have someone over you, right? Where you'd be promoted up to another level. And so that's where you find yourself at a plateau. And this is in different industries that it takes place, different kinds of companies, not just small, but in large companies, where you just feel like you're about to hit a wall. And where else can I possibly go? Anytime an employee feels like they've hit a career plateau, what happens is they start to oftentimes get depressed, panic, get angry. They can shut down and stop actually performing at the standard level. They quickly try to find another job where they find they'll have a more rewarding path. So it's important that HR works with the other senior management to help make sure that career path has different arteries, right, to feed off of, where employees don't ever feel like they've reached as far as they can possibly go. I think that the only point where you can be at that point is if you're chief executive officer, if you're CEO, there's no other higher place that you can be. You're the head. But how often does the head feel like, oh gosh? Now, the head can feel like that as far as there not being enough excitement and innovation within their life and their career and the company, and they want to do some changes. But as far as feeling that that's the end of their career path, that, I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm saying that oftentimes the probability of that is less. You can feel like you've reached, the max at a particular company. But it's making sure that, and usually by the time you've reached the CEO status, whether you've worked your way up a company or you created a company, whatever, your mind is always constantly cranking out ideas of how you can do better, get more, experience more. So it's important that that same mindset is shared and pushed down the ladder to your other employees. So let's look at some of the career categories. We have learners, and those are people with high potential for advancement, but you're currently performing below the standards that's set. Stars are doing outstanding work. They have high potential for advancement. Our solid citizens are, they have satisfactory performance, but your future advancement chances is relatively small. Deadwood, you are you've fallen off, right? Your level of performance is unsatisfactory. You have little to no potential for advancement. You're like Deadwood. You're just lying there, just waiting to get kicked off to the side. So table 10.3 in your textbook shows you classifying careers, and you look at the current performance compared to the likelihood of future promotion. And high performance with low future promotion probability shows you that it's a solid citizen. They have effective plateaus, a high performance with a high likelihood of promotion or your stars. So it's showing you what I shared with you in a visual chart. Now, here's some actions for managing that plateauing process. To prevent them from taking place, you create this process, and it helps your plateaus, those are the individuals that plateau, it helps them from becoming ineffective within your organization. It helps to integrate relevant career-related information systems and manage your ineffective plateaus and any frustrated employees that you may have so they're more effective. And this can help prevent a problem from occurring. By involving your plateaus to adjust to a solid citizen category and realize they have not necessarily failed, right? You've just hit a bump in the road. You've run into an obstacle. And there are available avenues for personal development and growth that should be pointed out to your team members. It's important to integrate relevant career-related information systems where you're improving the monitoring so that emerging problems can be detected and treated early on rather than later, when oftentimes organizations just get frustrated and choose to terminate an employee's employment contract. And it can largely be implemented through a thorough performance appraisal system. And you have some companies, especially smaller companies, that fail to actually create and implement an appraisal system. So making sure that that's aligned and in place, and making sure that you encourage open communication between the manager and the appraisee. And managing ineffective plateaus and frustrated employees more effectively is where you're focused on curing the problem once it's arisen, like immediately, not when the problem is just huge or quote unquote cancerous, where it just cannot be contained. You have to just cut it out and get, and get rid of it. So making sure that you're identifying the problem head on and immediately. There's some reasons for rehabilitating individuals who have hit that plateau stage. Those that have job knowledge, knowledge about the organization, who are loyal to the company, and have a concern for the well-being. This is the some reasons for why you should, as a manager, as a organization. Now, there's some possibilities for rehabilitation. You can provide alternate means of recognition, develop new ways to make their current jobs more satisfying, effect revitalization through reassignment to another job or project, utilize reality-based self-development programs, change managerial attitudes towards plateaued employees, because oftentimes you'll have a manager who has a negative feeling or treatment of those employees, as though now they can be easily discarded. And if chances for the employee to receive recognition through a future promotion are slim, look for different ways. It could be working on a task force or some other special assignments. to help reignite them, participating in brainstorming sessions. Um, they can represent the organization to other people. They can help kind of be ambassadors of um, the organization. Training new employees can be one way. And when you look at developing new ways to make their current jobs more satisfying, um, the more that you can engage and entice and excite your employees about their current job, the lower the likelihood that they'll remain ineffective. It's usually when employees have lost their zest and zeal and the buy-in that you notice that they are no longer really engaged in their job. And making sure that you relate employees' performance to the total organizational goals. So they see how their work impacts the organization, both positively and negatively, but also how it helps the company reach its goals. And creating competition in the job and making sure that it's healthy competition, not cutthroat competition, not pitting each other, the employees against each other to the point where, once again, you can devalue, degrade, and diminish your employees. When we talk about our effective revitalization through reassignment, as I said, you can actually help someone by switching their job positions at the same level that require many of the similar, if not the same, skills and experiences that they have on their current job. And the reality-based self-development programs that I mentioned, instead of assigning them to developmental programs designed to help them move into future jobs, you can assign them to development programs that can help them perform better in their present jobs so that they can excel where they are. And then the last bullet point, that change managerial attitudes towards the plateaued employees. I said this, but oftentimes there's always some sense of negativity that is directed towards an employee when they've reached that plateau. Table 10.4 in your textbook shows this lattice or lattice. Some people, I call this lattice, or everyone has their own little pronunciation. Thinking versus ladder thinking. And so if you know anything about a lattice, it is usually made out of wood or vinyl fencing that crisscrosses, right? And they usually form like a diamond shaping, and you'll have that fencing, in your yard. And so the thinking, that type of thinking in an organization is at any angle. So it goes side to side, up or down, and it's what and how employees contribute is the most important, and it's about being collaborative, and the long-term strategy is very fluid, and so you have growth in your current position. You look organizational wide for expertise, not just within a certain department or level of the organization. Rewards are based on learning and performance. Now, in ladder thinking, if you visualize a ladder, right, you have rungs to the ladder and they go up, right, or down, depending on the direction you're walking in. And so that's where you're restricted to, up or down. The importance is on promotions and titles. You always have to go to the boss for the answers, because guess what? The boss always hands the answers. The short-term strategy is always static. Temporary promotions, you have to always look upward. You have to look to the top for expertise. Is never going to be looked at within your level or any other level. And rewards are always tied to your title. So you can look at different organizations where you worked in the past and possibly present, and to see which type of thinking that your organization is structured based on. Within both of my organizations, my Foreman and Associates consulting and coaching firm, we use a lattice thinking. In my tech firm, Storyboard Nation, we use a lattice thinking. Neither of my organizations, we use ladder thinking. It just is limited, and we don't like to be restricted. So we choose to do lattice. Many organizations that I work for they have been involved with, they are structured around, they are focused on and motivated by ladder thinking. Now, let's look at the difference between dual career and dual earner couples. In a dual career couple, both members have highly committed careers. They're committed to those careers. They view work as essential to their psychological sense of self. They view employment as part of their career path. Now, in dual earner relationships, one or both of the members of that relationship define their employment as relating to rewards. They don't see their employment as an integral part of their self-definition. So if you see, there's on the one side, there's a heavy focus on the career itself. On the other side, they're like, look, we're both making money, and from these jobs that we have, we get this money, we get these perks, and that's how we're rewarded. But it does not define us as individuals or as a couple. Single parent employees. Of course, there's needs and requirements that are different from families that have at least one parent at home, and or both parents working. And there should be a proactive corporate programs that take into consideration some, most, or all of these things, such as child and elder care. Why is this important? You immediately can think of child care because, if you're a single parent and you're working, you need to be able to have child care to take someone to watch and help educate and take care of your child while you're at work. Well, what happens when your parent reaches an age where they cannot take care of themselves 100% of the time? When they need help with getting around, they need help with being fed or bathed or whatever. You need to be able to have a caregiver who can help take care of them when you're at work. So being very proactive, a corporate program should take into consideration these needs, both child care and elder care, and put things in motion that allows you the flexibility in order to, not only the flexibility, but the compensation in order to make sure that you can take care of any children that you have and any elders in your family that you need to take care of. A second element is flexible work scheduling. Some companies are starting to get away from this 8 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and starting to come in with more flexible scheduling that takes in consideration that too many of our employees are stuck in traffic trying to get to work by 8 o'clock. You're leaving out at 6 and you're barely squeaking in, you're stressed out, and then you leave at 5 and you're stuck in traffic. So if more companies say, you know what, how about you come in and you work from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.? How about you come in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Or how about you come in Monday to Thursday between the so-and-so hours? So making sure the scheduling is flexible. Job sharing and part-time work is something that should always be factored in. Allowing people to share the same job, split the work so the more work can actually be accomplished in a given day. Allowing for there to be part-time work assignments. Allowing for telecommuting so that people can actually work from home or wherever they have internet connection. Parental leave and personal time. So we talked about child and elder care, but also making sure that you have time to be able to leave to take care of any personal or parental stuff, taking your child to the doctor or to some other appointment. Being able to also have the time for whatever follow-up appointments you need as the parent And personal time. You need time to be able to clear your brain, to re-energize, to recharge, and having some personal time where you do not have your cell phone or any other device, attached to your hip, where you're having to respond to emails, text, instant message, and any other kind of notifications, where you can actually disconnect from work for a specific amount of time. And honestly, this is something that should just be taken into consideration, not just for single parent employees, but for all employees. That's my opinion, because it wouldn't matter if there was one parent at home or not, or if both parents work. This is detrimental to a household. If both parents work and you don't have something set in place that allows you to have child and elder care, parental leave, and personal time, hello? So I see why, I understand why McGraw-Hill, points this out, but I think that this is not just something that should be a focus of employers to consider for their single parent employees, but for all of their employees. Because even elder care, I don't have to be a parent to have an elder that I need to take care of, right? So to me, this is something that should be designated for all employees. Outplacement. So there's a benefit that's provided by your organization to help you leave the organization and get a job someplace else. Remember earlier I talked about the career path and a career plan, and the fact is that it should not just be defined and limited and restricted to where your career can go within your organization, but where it can go outside of your organization. And so outplacement helps you to be able to get a job someplace else. A lot of times outplacement is tied to and associated with any downsizing or mergers or restructuring, but it should just be in general as far as the career planning and career path, and the fact that you may reach your this organization may be a stepping stone to somewhere else, to something greater, and so there should be outplacement to help you go to that next level. And there should be various services that are offered through the program, which includes skill assessments, establishing new career objectives, helping you with your resume and interview training, and helping with job interviews, and helping you actually get some job interviews, right? To help you generate some interviews. Now, glass ceiling. We talk about glass ceiling. We've been talking about glass ceiling for well over 50 years. And these are invisible barriers that are found in various organizational structures that appear to prevent you or limit your ability to advance upward, up that ladder. And these are usually tied to the glass ceiling towards or set upon women and minorities, where you can see through it. You can see where the rungs on the ladder are, but for whatever reason, you can't get to that next rung. There's something that's blocking you. And so that is the glass ceiling. So what are some of the practices that contribute to this? Word of mouth recruiting. Right? That means that I'm not posting this job online or on the bulletin board in the lunchroom. I'm only telling a select few people. That can contribute to the creation of a glass ceiling. Inadequate access to developmental opportunities for women and minorities. So if you don't have career development, job knowledge, different skill sets or certifications, things of that nature, then guess what? You're not going to be qualified for a higher position. So if we don't provide you with greater access to those opportunities, you won't be able to seize those opportunities. Another practice is the lack of responsibility amongst your senior management team for equal opportunity employment opportunities within the organization. And a lot of senior managers want to delegate that responsibility and those efforts to those below them. But just like culture is dictated by the top, by your senior manager, so are opportunities for advancement, and whether or not you have a ladder type of thinking or a lattice type of thinking. And so if the senior management team does not take responsibility for that to make sure, and it's not a something that pushes them on a day-to-day basis, then guess what? That glass ceiling will definitely be created. So here's some suggestions on how we can actually knock down job advancement barriers. We can demonstrate commitment, as I just mentioned. Hold our line managers, which are your frontline managers on that front level, accountable for progress, including diversity in all strategic business plans. Use affirmative action to ensure that all qualified individuals compete based on ability and merit. So you're actually making sure that opportunities are made available to all, and that you're making sure that everyone has the ability to compete fairly, has access to compete, and that it's based on ability and merit. It's not based on who you know, how much money you have, what color your skin, what your religion, what your gender, right? It's based on ability and merit, but making sure that everyone has access, right? There's a race, there's a track meet, but if you're only you're limiting who can actually enter the races to compete, then guess what? You're not getting a full sample of the pool of candidates or of athletes. You're only taking a select. You're doing word of mouth and you're limiting it. You can also look for prospects from non-customary sources. You can have your customary sources and way you normally recruit for a position. But if you start to say, how can we think outside the box? How can we reinvent the box and actually look for individuals from other sources than where we normally go? Educating your employees about strengths and challenges of gender, of racial, ethnic, and cultural differences. It's important that when we look at those differences, we also can look at the similarities and see how we could turn challenges into opportunities. Another suggestion would be to initiate family-friendly programs that help men and women balance their work and family responsibilities, so that you're able to find ways in order to bring their family in, to involve them in different activities, to help them get a sense of who your husband or wife works with and what they do, and they can appreciate the efforts that they invest within the organization and how that plays into how they contribute to their household, and vice versa. So it allows there to be a greater bond where you can actually have what's like a work family, where now you actually have a shared concern and investment in your coworkers and their family members. Now, some of the online career planning resources that you can consider are information about employment trends and job opportunities. There's various self-assessment tools that you can use to determine which type of jobs you might like to pursue, which are best suited for you. There are links to online employment resources and individual online job counseling resources. Now, when we talk about life preparedness, there should be a healthy state of vigilance regarding threats to one's career well-being and alertness to resources and opportunities in which one can capitalize, so that people are prepared in life in all of the various ways that we go through this journey. So making sure that an organization is very vigilant towards making sure that we're taking into consideration the employees' well-being, both in their career and personally, and the different opportunities and resources that we can be able to provide. So with that, that is the end of Chapter 10. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you.